The Struggle to Preserve Judaism, 12.1 Introduction. In the last chapter, you read about the origins of Judaism. In this chapter, you will discover how Judaism was preserved even after the Hebrews lost their homeland. As you've learned, the Hebrew kingdom split in two after the death of King Solomon. Weakened by this division, the Hebrews were less able to fight off invaders. The northern kingdom of Israel was the first to fall in 722 BCE. The Assyrians conquered Israel. The kingdom's leaders were carried off to Mesopotamia. In 597 BCE, the kingdom of Judah was invaded by another Mesopotamian power, Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon laid siege to the city of Jerusalem. The Hebrews fought off the siege until their food ran out, and while the people starving, the Babylonians broke through the walls and captured the city. In 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar burned down Solomon's great temple of Jerusalem and all the houses in the city. Most of the people of Judah were taken as captives to Babylon. The captivity in Babylon was the beginning of the Jewish diaspora. The word diaspora means a scattering. Never again would most of the followers of Judaism be together in a single homeland. Yet the Jews, as they came to be known, were able to keep Judaism alive. In this chapter, you will learn about 4 important Jewish beliefs. Then you will read about the Jews' struggle to preserve Judaism after they've been forced to settle in many lands. The central beliefs and teachings of Judaism. The religious and moral ideas of Judaism have left a lasting mark on Western civilization. Let's look at 4 central beliefs and teachings of Judaism that remain very influential today. Monotheism. Most people in ancient times believed in many gods. The Hebrews were different. They believed that there is only one God, a belief called monotheism. Judaism is the world's oldest monotheistic religion. Judaism teaches that God is all-powerful and all-knowing. God is also the source of morality, standards of right and wrong. Jews believe in a solemn duty to honor and obey God. Many Jews feel they have a personal relationship with God. They speak to God through prayer and feel that God is close to them in daily lives. Following God's law is central to Jewish life. The Torah instructs Jews how to lead a life that pleases God. As you've learned, Judaism's oldest laws are the 10 Commandments. The commandments tell how to honor God. For example, one commandment tells Jews to set aside a holy day, the Sabbath, every week. The Sabbath is a day of rest and prayer. The commandments also lay down laws of right and wrong, such as you shall not steal and you shall not murder. Over time, Jewish religious leaders developed a much larger set of laws. For example, there were rules about how to prepare food and what foods should be avoided. Many religious practices developed, such as the celebration of Passover. This holy day honors God's rescue of the Hebrews from Egypt. Jews strive to be faithful to these rules and practices. Beginning with the 10 Commandments, Judaism has also been concerned with moral values of right and wrong. 2 important values are equality and social justice. Unlike some other ancient people, the Hebrews did not view the leaders as gods. They believed that there is only one God, and even kings had to obey God's law. Judaism teaches that all people who keep the laws are equal in God's sight. Belief in equality goes hand in hand with a concern for social justice. Many stories and sayings in the Torah teach about treating everyone fairly. For example, in one passage, Jews were told, "You shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and to the poor." Caring for the less fortunate in society is a basic value in Judaism. The importance of studying. Study of the Torah is very important in Judaism. Jews also study interpretations of the Torah made by scholars and rabbis. At first, decisions interpreting the Torah were passed down orally. In the 200 CE, Jewish scholars began writing the Talmud, which consists of oral traditions along with learned commentaries. The Talmud became a basic source of Jewish law. Later, rabbis wrote their own commandments on both the Torah and the Talmud. Throughout history, Jews have kept their reverence for study and learning. Many Jews stay in touch with Jewish history, law, and traditions through reading and discussion. They also pass on their knowledge to other members of the faith. The fall of Judah in 587 BCE and the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple in 586 threatened the survival of Jewish belief. Thousands of Hebrews entered captivity in Babylon. The Jewish diaspora had begun. From time to time on, the followers of Judaism would be scattered in many lands. Those who did not return home found their land dominated by foreign rulers. It would not be easy to keep Judaism alive. Ruled by the Babylonians, Persians, and Greeks. The Hebrew captives in Babylon lived there for half a century. In this time of sorrow, great prophets rose up to encourage the people to remain faithful to Judaism. It was after this time that the Hebrews came to be known as Jews. The Babylonians called their captives Judeans after the homeland of Judah. The name was later shortened to Jews. In 539, the Babylonians were conquered by the Persians. The Persian king Cyrus released the Jews from captivity. Many Jews returned to Judah, where they immediately set work building a new temple. Others stayed behind in Babylon. Since then, Jews outside the homeland never stopped praying to return. For nearly 400 years, Judah was ruled by foreigners, first the Persians and later the Greeks. Sometimes the foreign rulers were kind. More often they were harsh. The Greek rulers tried to force the Jews to worship idols of Greek gods at the temple, and in 168 BCE, the Jews rebelled and started a war that lasted 27 years. In 164 BCE, they drove the Greeks from Jerusalem and repurified the temple. The victory is still celebrated by Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. For 88 years after the war with the Greeks, the Jews lived in Judah, had an independent kingdom. Then in 63 BCE, they were conquered by the Romans. The Romans were building a great empire, and they were quick to stamp out any sign of rebellion. More than 50,000 Jews were brutally executed under their rule, but the Romans didn't allow the Jews to practice their religion and to govern some of their own affairs. In 22 BCE, King Herod, who was allowed to rule in Judah, announced a huge project to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem so that it would be even more magnificent than Solomon's temple. The work took 46 years to complete. In 66 CE, the Jews rose up against the Romans, and for 3 years they managed to keep the Romans out of Jerusalem. Then in 70 CE, a Roman military leader named Titus led an army of 60,000 soldiers against the Jews. The Jews fought back fiercely, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. They watched in horror as the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and its great temple. All that remains of the temple was the Western Wall, and to this day, Jews consider it very sacred. The Roman victory became the final scattering of the Jewish people from their homeland. The Romans seized Jewish land and forbade the Jews from entering Jerusalem. Thousands of Jews were sent to other parts of the Roman Empire. The Jews had lost their homeland and their holy city. Yet Judaism not only survived, it flourished. Next, you will learn how the Jews preserved their faith and their way of life. Preserving and passing on the teachings of Judaism. After losing their homeland, their holy city, and the great temple that was the heart of their faith, the Jews faced a great struggle to preserve their religion. Jews were scattered among many Gentile or non-Jewish lands. With creativity and dedication, they found a variety of ways to keep Judaism alive. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, one individual who helped to preserve Judaism, was a rabbi or religious teacher named Yochanan ben Zakkai. When the revolt against Rome broke out in 66 CE, ben Zakkai was afraid Judaism would not survive. He worried that Jewish rabbis would die in the fight. If they were lost and the temple was destroyed, Judaism would be left with nothing. Ben Zakkai begged the Jews to surrender in order to save Judaism. When they refused, he decided to approach the Romans for help. Ben Zakkai faked his death and was smuggled out of Jerusalem in a coffin. He met with Vespasian, a Roman general, and pleaded for a chance to start a Jewish school in the small town of Yavne. Together with other rabbis, Ben Zakkai was allowed to start the school. When Jerusalem fell, Yavne became the center of Jewish life. Ben Zakkai and 71 other rabbis created a new religious lawmaking body. They also made Yavne a training ground for other rabbis. Teachers from around the world came to Yavne to study. Then they returned to their communities to share what they had learned. In this way, the rabbis at Yavne made sure that all Jews had leaders to guide them. In addition to training other rabbis, the rabbi at Yavne introduced new practices and ensured the teachings of Judaism would be passed on. Traditionally, only one religious leader were allowed to read from the Torah. The Yavne rabbis decided that any adult male could read the sacred text. As a result, Jews no longer needed a traditional leader to learn about Jewish history and law. The rabbi also made the synagogue more important in Jewish life. A synagogue is a house of worship, but it's also a place to study and to hold meetings and social gatherings. The rabbis told Jews to build a synagogue wherever there was at least 10 adult males. By building synagogues, Jews would strengthen their communities and their faith. These new practices helped Jews preserve their religion in communities around the world. Over the centuries, rabbis studied and commented on Judaism's sacred text and developed other new practices. Jews often faced prejudice and persecution, but kept their faith. In 1948, a new Jewish state, Israel, was created in part of the lands once ruled by David and Solomon. Jews from many countries settled in Israel. For others, the traditions established over many centuries allowed their religion to thrive in non-Jewish lands.